All right, guys, it's fantastic. And ladies, it's fantastic to have you here this afternoon. I've got a great panel with me. I got Holly Soffer. She's the general counsel from the American Association of Public Insurance Adjusters. And I've got Amy Bach from United Policyholders. I couldn't have been surrounded by better people teaching this afternoon, as well as going through some things that I thought would be extraordinarily important. You know, this topic about politics and how it affects your future as a public adjuster, we think is extraordinarily important. I was talking with Holly and Amy about all their legislative efforts that they've been doing all over the United States. And I said, you know, we've got so many different associations and people scattered all over the place. I think it's time that we have a public discussion, you know, about this. And we're picking out this time anyway. Next thing you know, we're all at home, and it's just really fantastic the way this has kind of worked out. But it's extraordinarily important with respect to public adjusting that you become personally involved somewhat in the politics and use the trade associations you've got to help advocate for policyholders, which really then comes back and benefits, and it's really advocating for you. We think that the coverage gap issue is really huge. And I was talking with Amy, I was talking with actually Holly up in Chicago about this. Apia put together a number of organizations that all came together. We met up in Chicago. It was the first time I met Holly, and she started talking about the coverage gap issue being so big, and that's what Apia was really focusing on at the time. I had to go back to Florida, and sure enough, the public adjuster calls me up out of the blue and starts moaning and groaning about I can't do anything with respect to this water loss. They got a limitation of $5,000. The claim is $100,000. What do you do? You know, I can't make a living, Chip, on taking care of these claims, and it's because of this coverage limitation, which is really a coverage gap that Holly was talking about. And it's something that Amy and Holly have been working on for a while with Professor Feynman out of Rutgers. And there's even now talk about possibly having a standard all risk insurance policy. So you know, that's important to you. And it's also political in the sense that in order to get these things pushed, you have to bring them to the insurance commissioners in order to do it. And the last thing we wanted to talk about, because it's just so timely, is the coronavirus coverage and what you should be doing as a public adjuster right now. So, you know, having said that, let me introduce myself to you just real quick. And I'm Chip Merlin. I've written a book. Most people know who I am in the public insurance business. What you might not know is I've got these licenses all over. I've had to take full bar examinations in California, New Jersey, Mississippi, and Florida, just because there's just no reciprocity with respect to those states. The others I've been able to get into, fortunately, and now have a law firm that's got, I think, approximately 12 offices with banned attorneys. I think our firm now has 65 attorneys total, with 16 of them in Puerto Rico. I hope that they're working from home right now, but you can't even, they'll arrest you in Puerto Rico if you walk outside. So my first speech I ever gave to the public adjuster, this is a picture of the year when I first gave it out, was posing and primping in the whole bit. But in June of 1985, in Carmel, California, a public adjuster, Ira Saracen, he knew me when I was doing property insurance defense work. He stood up, he got me a speech out there about examinations under oath and proofs of loss. I can still remember Harvey Goodman trying to stump this young attorney out there, but I've been working with public adjusters for a really, really long time now, 35 years. And I've enjoyed every minute of it. And Amy, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit and tell everybody about United Policyholders.
Okay, so I have been a professional advocate for insurance consumers, or as we know, policyholders, since the 80s, when I was working in the for a consumer protection agency attached to the legislature in New York. Saw that the policyholder side was very much outmatched in the political world by the insurance lobby, and then thought, well, this is a place I could make myself useful. I became, if you could just stay with that for 1 second, and I co-founded United Policyholders in 1991, and with a whistleblowing claim adjuster from an insurance company. When together we recognize that after disasters in particular, the victims need some guidance, they need conduits. And the first PA that I ever met was at our very first United Policyholders workshop, 1991 in Oakland, after that, what at that time was the biggest urban wildfire. I didn't understand what that meant, a PA, but it was Randy Goodman, and it turned out not only did he become a very important source of technical information for us, but I saw how public adjusters, what an important ally they can be for consumer advocates. So that kind of was the birth of our long-standing relationships with public adjusters and NAPIA and now Apia. In the political battles we fight, the litigation battles, etc. So why am I part of this? Because we are teammates. Keeping up, it means that my organization, we're constantly monitoring what are the products that are out there in the market, what are the language trends. So every time insurers see a big exposure, such as we saw it with mold, we see them curtail coverage in the wording. Same thing with water, with all kinds of things that we're going to be talking about today. My organization monitors claim handling trends, political legislative developments, marketplace trends, ongoing battles. I've been a funded consumer rep at the NAIC now for 13 years. So we've built a lot of relationships with legislators. We've been tag teaming with NAPIA and now with Apia in those efforts. So again, we're teammates, we're allies. What does UP do? We educate, we advocate for insurance consumers. We do it with you guys. We do it with the firms like CHIPS that are in the trenches, just like you are, battling for coverage. My organization doesn't do individual representation. We're a conduit so that consumers can get information from us and find out about you guys and then get your help when they need it. We go into disaster areas. We have a roadmap to recovery program. We do all kinds of publications online. Our library at uphelp.org is a great resource, and we have a lot of public adjusters that support us, that contribute. We need more. We'll talk about that later. But again, you will see me at the NAPIA conferences, at the FPCC. You will see me at the NAIC, and you will know that
and if they come to San Francisco, Amy, tell them where you're at right now in the basement of your home.
Right. So I am broadcasting live from my very own tiki bar in my basement. So Chip's been here. I hope that Holly will be here. But again, you know, we know the subject matter is tough. It's a little dry. We try to keep it light. So here I am.
And if they become a sponsor and stuff like that, maybe they can go there too, right?
That's right. That's exactly right.
In the tiki bar.
Right. So yeah, thank you. And this is just a snapshot. Actually, that was a snapshot from our. We can give 1 second. So I think this is if you can go back for 1 split second. So this is a screenshot from our website. One of the very important things that United Policyholders does that no other consumer group does is we educate consumers. What is a public adjuster? Why would you want to hire one? Why are they valuable? And this is our wrap about the value of your profession. And this is what we put out there on our website every day. And in our disaster recovery handbook, we have a whole section about public adjusters. And I think that was one of the first publications before a lot of the books started coming out, including Chip's book, that educated consumers that there is a professional that you can actually hire to be on your side. Next slide.
There we go, Holly. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Thank you. Sorry, I don't have an old picture of myself. I've been an attorney for more than 30 years now. I stopped counting at year 30. And as Chip mentioned in the beginning, I represent Apia, which is the American Association of Public Insurance Adjusters. I also act as counsel to one of the local groups, the other MAPIA, which is the Mid-Atlantic Association of Public Insurance Adjusters. And I have had the pleasure of working with both Chip and Amy in the last few years on many things, including the what we feel is one of the largest issues facing public adjusters and policyholders, the coverage gap issues, which we'll talk about later in the presentation. But before we talk about that, I just wanted to introduce Apia. Apia, as you know, is the other national association. They're both good, and you know, I would encourage, and we'll talk about this later, encourage you, you're a public adjuster, to actually join both national associations. Doesn't have to be one or the other. We all have our strengths. So Apia was founded in 2004 when the NAIC Model Act was being drafted. Apia was formed to have some input into the language, into that model law, which we're proud to say has become law, or parts of it have become law in a lot of states now. And it's really used as the gold standard of public adjuster bills all over the country. So Apia has mostly done legislative and regulatory monitoring over the years. Every single day I get StateNet reports every bill that affects public adjusters, every regulation anywhere in the country hits my desk. And now even I've been monitoring COVID-19 legislation and registration the same way. We've also focused on lobbying. Chip calls it our pretzel lobbying efforts at NAIC. We lobby there. We lobby in the state legislatures to promote the value of public adjusters and the public adjusting profession. It's not always for any particular issue or piece of legislation, but we always talk about the value of what you bring to the claims process as you do your jobs. In 2020, our original agenda has changed somewhat because of COVID-19, but originally we were focusing on fighting some legislation that would impose restrictions on how public adjusters perform their jobs. And we'll talk about that in different states over the country. And also our main focus again is on these coverage gap issues that Amy is going to discuss at length as we move forward.
So I wanted to show these two photographs as we get into the politics of matter. I want everybody to focus on this one because a lot of people are really happy to have seen that. And if you take a look at this next photograph, you're going to find some people that just felt absolutely the opposite way. And I think if I wanted to show two different visuals, one that and one this, it kind of answers the question that, why politics matter. I mean, they matter all the time, and you're going to be happy or you're going to be sad. But if you're a public adjuster, politics matter an awful lot today. And I'm going to ask Amy to go through and with Holly, just please go through and discuss some of these particular issues that we've got and why, because you all are out there on the battlefields doing this. Why do politics matter?
Well, I mean, I think if just the snapshot that you just showed, Chip, of the president is a perfect illustration, because when we get to the soundbite from his recent pronouncement that businesses, that insurance companies should be paying business interruption claims, that captures the essence of why politics matter. That was helpful, but before that happened, we had the NAIC, which is heavily influenced by insurance lobbyists. They came out very early saying, oh, these COVID losses aren't going to be covered. So that's why it matters.
Now, Holly, I know you're fighting this on a state-by-state battle, on these ongoing battles. You're yourself been doing a lot of lobby effort. Why don't you go through some of these issues for the public adjusters?
Sure, and these are the non-COVID-19 issues that were on our original agenda that are still important, because remember, this will end someday and you're going to go back to, hopefully, to doing your job the way that you've done it before, and will be faced with some of these same issues that you will be facing prior to this. So all of the rest of that is certainly very important, but the rest of it is still important too. So there are a few issues that we at Apia we're fighting this year, and that we do every year. That's why the slide is called ongoing battles. It's nothing new, as all of you know who are listening to this webinar. These are things that come up year after year, one state to another. And remember that old commercial that says, if it happens in Vegas, it stays in Vegas? Well, with public adjusting, if it happens in one state, it doesn't stay in that state. The insurance commissioners meet 3 times a year at NAIC. They have committees that have members of every state. In those committees, they all talk, they all work together. So it's, as much as insurance is state regulated, in some ways it's more of a national issue, because the insurance commissioners from the states work together. So even if you're not having this issue in your state right now, you still have to be aware of it. And that's why the national associations are so important, because if it's not there now, it's coming in the months ahead. So some of the issues are where insurance companies and independent agents discourage consumers from hiring a PA. And that becomes really important in states like Florida, where these long rescissionary or quiet periods and rescissionary periods are being offered, so that if you can solicit the claim for X number of days after the loss, during that time they can come in and try and dissuade your clients from hiring a public adjuster at all. And the same applies for the long rescissionary periods. I know there have been proposals in Florida for 45 days, and during that time, the insurance companies can come in and talk to your clients about not hiring a public adjuster at all. We obviously deal with licensing. Not every state licensed public adjusters. There are a few that we've been working on in the past year or two, or even 3. I won't get into the details, but Wisconsin, Alabama, and Kansas, again, which only licenses public adjusters for commercial claims. Again, we've talked about quiet periods, notice. Illinois now is facing a 1-day notice provision, so that if you have to report the claim to the carrier within 24 hours of when you sign the claim, which is way, way, way too short. And in the face of that, though, something good has happened. Some public adjusters in Illinois, so far there are 10 of them, are starting to form an association. So that will be a new public adjuster association. And if any of you who in Illinois are watching this, welcome to the family. We would love to have you. Please join both national associations so that we can work together to fight some of these issues. Pennsylvania has a 2-day notice provision, which doesn't always work that well, especially after storms. And I'll try and keep this quick, but right when that bill was passed in Pennsylvania was only a few days after the Superstorm Sandy hit. So right when they instituted their 2-day provision, they had to suspend it for a while because no one had power, no one could actually report claims. So something like that doesn't really work well in a catastrophe. So other issues that we're fighting, of course, are restrictions on fees and the way you write your contract for public adjusters. There's an 8% across the board fee cap in Hawaii that we have been fighting in the past year, and luckily the legislature has been suspended there, but I'm sure it's coming back. And as you know, there's an existing 2.5% fee cap in Delaware. Chip and I had been talking about this earlier on the first $25,000 of claims. And then it's, I think, 12% on the next, in the next level, so that it really prohibits public adjusters from taking smaller claims there. I mean, no matter how you feel about the whole fee cap issue, and I know there are differences of opinion on that, 2.5% is not enough, no matter what. It really prohibits people from getting the help of public adjusters across the board. There are other limitations on fees, not just on the amount, but on when you can take your fee. California is facing a bill now which limits how you can take your fee and on what money, and even on different parts of the claim. You can say, I'm only taking a fee on this part or that part of the claim and not on the whole thing. So we're at Apia involved in all those things as well. And then of course there are the other things that I know NAPIA has done a great job of, is the whole Apia issue, the unauthorized practice of public adjusting, keeping contractors and other professionals from doing your job as licensed public adjusters. That's starting to change as well. Both the courts and the legislators are starting to recognize that public adjusters need to be licensed. And that's one reason we're pushing so hard for licensing in these states that don't have licensing. One thing I was remiss in talking about before we move on is when you introduced me, Chip, I forgot to mention, and I apologize, that Apia has a new president, Paul Yam. So if any of you missed our press release, he took over early this year, and he's going to do a great job. He's already done a great job. He's the former president of our local Public Adjuster Association. So Paul, if you're listening, congratulations, and really look forward to working with you moving forward.
You know, Paul's a real public adjuster. I was at a Apia event, and we got done. We go to the bar, and I walk up, and I'm talking to the bartenders, and Paul comes walking up to me, and Paul, you're here. She was a client of Paul. I couldn't believe it right there. I mean, you can't believe it. A public adjuster's adjuster. So anyway.
And after Paul left, he said he was very happy, Chip, that you left a really good tip, because maybe he'll get repeat business from her.
You know, I didn't want to, we talk about the trade associations, and maybe it kind of gets into just a little bit. But Amy, what is it that, and I've talked about it, what is it that the public adjusters can do, for United policyholders?
Well, we have a sponsorship program. So there are two things you can do. You can support us financially, become a sponsor, which gives you some marketing benefits, but you can also engage with our substantive work, with the advocacy work we're doing on an ongoing basis to reverse coverage gaps and protect the integrity and the reasonable expectations of the policyholders. To sponsor, very important. That gets you in the family, it gets you in our Find Help directory. And that would be, we'll give you a link for that. It's for less than $100 a year. You can become a silver level sponsor. It's a $1,000 tax deductible contribution to get you in that official category. And then as a volunteer, we ask, we'll be talking about this later more. We're looking for you to be sending us at policies@uphelp.org samples of really egregious exclusions that are messing you up, that are making it hard for you to do your job.
So all the ladies and gentlemen that signed in, y'all know what's going on here. Chip had something in mind for you, and one of those is to join these organizations. And I'm going to go through that in a second. One of the first ones I would strongly suggest you need to join is United Policyholders. They're the one organization that year after year is going out talking with insurance commissioners, all the state legislatures. Whenever you're in trouble, I mean, all these amicus briefs, everything that goes on is about the policyholder, and that's the one thing that we can all agree upon, that what we're here to do, whether you're an attorney or public adjusters, here to help the policyholder. That's what we do. If we didn't do that, we wouldn't be doing our job. And so Amy is that great advocate for them. She's been there year in, year out, never asking for grandiose anything. She's not trying to make a profit for it. My God, her basement she had to make in a tiki hut because she can't afford to go out to bars in San Francisco. So let's help Amy out if we can, and that's one of the things. But I also, Amy, it's less. How much? Tell them how much it costs to join.
So it's $1,000 for a silver level. That's the a sponsorship. We have two other levels, gold and platinum. But for most PAs, the 1,000 is going to be fine. You don't need the click-through link. And again, that's going to get you on our 50-state map. That's going to get you, more exposure, affiliation with a brand. Our brand has a lot of respect across the country. We get 500,000 visitors to our website every year. It's growing all the time, and media sources use us. So we are a conduit between the consumer and you. You all have great marketing. Some of you have great marketing operations. We are another way for you to get to raise your profile and to explain to the world the value of what you do in a different way.
So and I get a chance to see some of these public adjusters' contracts. I get to see the closing statements and stuff like that. I was on the phone with Masood Khan, and he was talking about how much it might cost for his firm to join. I'm like, Masood, look at the size of this you got, that you could at least give less than, it looks like it's like 0.1%, and you could be a great sponsor of United Policyholders. Why don't you just do it right now? Take this money out of this check. I know you all can afford to go do it, especially when the money comes in that way. Holly, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I just said I've seen Amy at NAIC. It's not just some nebulous thing. I've seen her there. I've seen the respect that she has from all the regulators and how hard she works to support the rights of policyholders. So it really can only benefit you from joining UP and from sponsoring, aside from all the lofty ideals about helping people and helping policyholders, which is all good. It will bring some of that respect to your organization as a public adjuster if you can put on your website that you're a sponsor of UP. As Amy said, it can only help market your firm if you do that.
Thank you. I appreciate this.
I'm going to say this, might makes right. Might makes right. And the more you join up and you have an association, it means something. The other part is to support all these other public adjuster associations.
Right.
There's a lot of leaders, and I have a lot of respect for the people that are out there doing. I called Tim Cornette one night. I said, man, you picked a really rough time to be president of the Florida Association of Public Insurance Adjusters, and so did all of your board, because the legislature's going crazy down here. They eventually stopped everything, but the leaders are out there day after day doing things. Apia, and I've said this for just a long time. If you ever wanted to go and be with people that know claims, that have the most experience, that are sitting around there collegially talking about things and pondering how to do it, just to learn. I love going to both the meetings in November and December, at the winter meeting, and then the annual conference. You won't find more experienced public adjusters. I can just say this honestly, in Apia. Brian Goodman has done an amazing job over the years that he's been general counsel. David Barrett, a longtime executive director. Jeff O'Connor showed real leadership with Apia, sending out a letter just last week to all the insurance commissioners, asking them to extend deadlines for policyholders because of the circumstances of the coronavirus. But certainly Apia has been a major leader for a long period of time with respect to getting public adjusters licensed so that you can practice your trade as a public adjuster. I strongly encourage people to look into to at least go to the meetings at Apia. I've personally benefited so much, from it. And Holly, you said some about Apia, but why don't you just say a couple more words before I move on to some of the regional associations?
Great. Well, as just, we want you to join Apia and Apia. At Apia, I think we're really good at monitoring legislation and fighting for rights of public adjusters all over the country. We do a lot of lobbying work to talk about the value of public adjusting. So there's room in your budget. Please join both associations, because there are things that we each do well, and we all work together. People talk about in this time, everyone's in it together, stick together, we can overcome things. The same is true about public adjusting. It's one industry. The industry should speak with a united voice. So please join us and help us help you.
Well, here we go. If you notice something, I remember Serena Williams sometimes. She said, man, I feel like all I'm doing is fighting these ovas from everywhere. Every female tennis player seems to end with the last name Ova, and every single public adjuster seems to have Apia, Apia. Here we go, Apia, which is not California, the Connecticut Association of Public Adjusters. I know Jason Sierri and our firm gets up there quite a bit, and John Biller's their general counsel for a long time and been doing a great job. But if you're up in that area of New England, Apia's out there, but don't get that confused with the other Apia. I told Amy, what we ought to do is put them in, if we have nothing else to do, we could put a Apia from Connecticut and a Apia from California and let them go at it. And the winner gets to keep the name. The other losers got to change. But it's been out there for a long time. Rob Greenspan's been doing a fantastic job lately, pushing on that. I know Jeff Sobring has been a longtime president and supporter of it. And as Amy, mentioned, the very first public adjuster that ever showed up was a Apia member and a former Apia president, Randy Goodman, one of the best public adjusters in the United States. Apia is relatively recent. Anita Taft, along with a lot of leadership from Apia, really pushed to have that. I was asked about it, gave some, my best advice about the start of that. Margie Butler is their executive director. They are the hardest working regional association I've ever been involved with. I can't believe they have these 2-hour meetings every single month on every single topic you can imagine, but they go at it. Apia in Texas has really grown and done well. And that really started back up right at the time of Hurricane Ike. Mary Fortson and I were at the bar of a steakhouse with Art Jansen and Jim Biddicky, got it reformed. And I mean, we just recently had a meeting out there, a fantastic meeting. And Kay Biddicky is the executive director and doing a fantastic job there. But if you're in Texas, if you're doing work in Texas, you ought to be joining that. Scott DeLuise out in Colorado calls me one time, Chip, we need to start something out here in Colorado, and we ought to get other people out there. We just don't have enough people. So I can't even say, there's 8 different states that are members of our Apia. Justin Skipton's been extraordinarily helpful out there with it. Justin Skipton also is an officer in Apia and is the really ran with and has this publication now, this Public Adjuster magazine that Apia is now publishing. It's really a fantastic publication. Kate Biddicky is also the executive director for our Apia. So I think the states, I'm going to try to do it really quick. Arizona, Nevada, Colorado, Wyoming, I believe Montana. Boy, I know there's more after that, but I'm failing it. I'm giving so many speeches out there, so I have to go back and take a look again. Everybody's gonna be upset, but if you're a member out there, it takes up a bunch of states all but just one. Apia, boy, I was part of that. Ray Altieri and I come off a plane, and Apia leaders are all upset because the Department of Insurance was talking about taking away the ability for public adjusters to even practice. They were going to do away with the licensing right after Hurricane Katrina. Apia was formed and shut that down starting back in 1993, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But Nancy Dominguez, as their executive director, has done an unbelievably great job. The leadership has done. Holly, you're shaking your head up and down because you've worked with Nancy and seen some of the great stuff. They have some of the best parties and conventions. They sell out with 600 public adjusters will show up. If you don't sign up, you don't get in. Boom, you can't even go. Tim Cornette did a fantastic job. And at some point in time, I would love him to come back and tell everybody else what it means to have an association behind you with a number of people talking with legislators and things like that. Paul Handrahan and Steve Geller are their lobbyists full time down there in Florida. And there's always stuff going on in Florida, for that. So Jonathan Wilkowski.
Steve Geller is a former lawmaker.
Yeah.
He's a former legislator.
Absolutely. Yeah, he is. It was NCOIL president at one time was Steve Geller. So no, they have some really good lobbyists with a lot of knowledge with respect to insurance. The New York Public Adjusters Association, that Jonathan Wilkowski has been running for a long period of time, and you're in New York, you should be there. They've been very active. Jonathan's done a great job with respect to, especially recently, on getting some appraisal language through and some other things in the legislature that have been very pro-consumer. And have helped public adjusters as a result of that. And here we go again. I guess this is called Apia, but I always remember the Massachusetts Adjuster Association because for 2 years our firm went up there and did the entire seminar that they had, which then turned into the first party claims conference. David Barrick ran with that, but that's not to be confused with. And Holly, how do you pronounce? Not Apia, it's called.
Well, some say Apia, some say Apia, just to distinguish the two. That's the Mid-Atlantic Association of Public Insurance Adjusters. And I just want to say we have, that's run by a great lobbyist who's the executive director, Joe DeSanctis, who's helped us a lot deal with issues in New Jersey, where New Jersey has been trying to put restrictions on public adjuster contracts and practices for many years. So it includes Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Maryland as well. And I know Chip has met them recently and is starting to work with Apia or Apia. I guess we won't want to have to duke it out, so we'll say Apia.
I got to give a big shout out to Jesse Sipe and Les Knox. They didn't want New Jersey to continue to be the stepsister to everybody from New York, so they formed their own association where the public adjusters are running it. And they didn't want to be a PIA anymore. They were kind of tired of that, so the Professional Public Adjusters Association of New Jersey was formed by then. And actually, I think a former president of Apia, Kevin Kaufman, is going to be is the coming in or is the current president of the PPA.
Yeah.
And just talking about that recently, we went last fall and we met with the insurance commissioner, had a good meeting with the insurance commissioner and their staff about public adjusters. And I walked out, Jesse Stipe, and said, man, it all starts somewhere, but just having that dialogue so that they know who you are and what you do. And then it follows back up with the efforts at, with the National Association of Public Insurance Adjusters. And the reason for this is if I just went through all these associations, with these national associations, with these fantastic leaders and people that are part of these associations that you can and should be a member of, and if you'll just participate a little bit more, you can build a really strong lobbying effort because there's nobody that knows things about the claims handling, what's going on, where the rubber meets the road, than public adjusters. All the dastardly things that insurance companies are doing. All the crazy policy language that's preventing people from being able to collect. Policyholders need you more than you can ever believe, today. And in getting to this, I want to go back, and this was a statement that Dick Tutwiler, I remember him making in 1993, because we were talking about doing all this in Florida and stopping, what the insurance industry wanted to do was to outlaw public adjusting back there. And Dick made this comment, I'll never forget. He said, so long as we always remember who we're here to serve and that we're always aligned with policyholders, because policyholders are the angels and we want to be on the sides of angels. And so when I say that, when we're on the sides of angels and it's policyholders we represent, the reason why this ties back into Amy Bach is because that's all she does. I know there's maybe trade association issues with respect to public adjusters, but if we just remember, who we serve and stuff like that, and I wanted to, for less than $1,000 a month, you can join her association as a sponsor. Come on, guys. I know you can afford it. I've seen the stuff out there. I know how much a lot of you make. And if you can't make that much, you can give just a little bit. Because I know there's some public adjusters just starting out that haven't been so successful. And people might be scared in these times, but these times are going to pass. And let me tell you what, fires, earthquakes, floods, hailstorms, tornadoes, they don't know that there's a coronavirus out there. They come anyway. You're pretty much in a recession-proof type of business. If you can get out there and do the inspections and sign people up, it's essential. And actually getting that lobbying in there, and y'all have done a great job about this with these associations, adjusting designated as being essential so you can go out there and do this during these periods of time. Just shows how much, lobbying, can mean. So,
and before we move on that lobby effort, I just want to say it doesn't all have to be about fighting particular challenges that you're facing right now. Lobbying can just be in general, as Chip was talking earlier, and Amy, about the value of public adjusting, what you bring to the claims process, being out there on the front lines. So in between association meetings and joining meetings, go visit your local legislator, go introduce yourself, go to your state representative's office. Say, I'm a public adjuster and here's what I do. And that way, if there is an issue later, at least people that are policymakers know what it is you do and know the value you bring to the process. That's something that all of the associations try to do. We try to say, here's what value public adjusters bring, so that if you try to restrict what we do, it can only hurt policyholders, because we are on the front lines protecting policyholders every day.
Yeah, and I think, I really do appreciate the plugs, Chip, very much. And I just to really reiterate the point here, though, that, I've seen a tremendous improvement in the public awareness of the profession of public adjusting, in terms of that you're not alone and you're not, we had a slide earlier that sort of showed the David Goliath of the dynamic that, most policyholders have no idea that they don't just have to take the word of the adjuster, that there may be another option for them. And that's really that is the main thrust of United Policyholders messaging, is that you're not alone, help is available. But for you guys as PAs, in your engagement, why it's so important that you support both us and be part of a trade association is because the trade associations are also maturing. You can see this. Chip just laid out all these state PAs. This has only happened in the last 10 years, that you're getting much more organized, and that will help you both, not just to protect your fees and your ability to do business and your freedom of contract, your freedom to solicit, but also your ability to show the value that you bring with your subject matter expertise. And that's why we're saying, send us that bad language, because we are your trade associations, UP, Chip, Holly, me, we are pulling it all together for the decision makers.
So why don't you, Amy, tell some of these people out there, these good people for the policyholders, about some of the coverage gaps and what they can do to help you out, and what United Policyholders is doing to fight these coverage gaps that are harming policyholders. The contractors, the construction people out there can't even get if there's not money, you just got to think about it. If there's not money out there because there's a coverage gap, how are the people going to get this stuff fixed? The contractors can't fix it. All of a sudden, there's not enough money. There's nothing for the public adjusters to adjust. And the policyholders looking around, most of them can't, put paychecks together to live and stuff like that. That's just the way it is with life. But let's go through some of these coverage gaps, and then what your ask is of the public adjusters.
Right, and you put in the title of today's program, coverage gaps are killers, right? Or and that's to Chip's point, like, you can be a great PA in terms of getting good inspections and getting a good scope pulled together and making the arguments about this wasn't pre-existing, this was caused by the event. But if there's an exclusion, you know, you're kind of your hands get tied, right? So together for years now, we've all been fighting, Chip and myself and Rutgers, we have been fighting to restore essential protections, but where are they manifesting themselves? Obviously, high deductibles, named storm, percentage deductibles have all been growing. Exclusions and limitations on water damage has been is obviously a huge problem for all of you out there. We always see creativity from the carrier side, from their drafting lawyers when they get hit with big losses, and they run back to the drafting table. Now we're seeing it with smoke and everyone, my organization, soon as we see, if we get that evidence, and we get them often from public adjusters, a sponsor sending something, we can go right to the State Department of Insurance and say, make sure that you put something out proactively to say, this exclusion is null and void. So we work on that, okay? Smoke and we've got
Amy, Amy, you showed me one where I mean, everybody's supposed to have fire, and some insurance company got out there and they put it an exclusion except for wildfire. And what do you have in California? Wildfire.
So California would say that's, yeah, so we brought that right to the department, and the department said, oh no, that wouldn't be enforceable. That exclusion is not enforceable because we have statutes that say there's a baseline, the New York Standard Form Fire Policy. But again, if we don't get that evidence from the field, then we don't have, you know, we'll go to the departments and they'll say, show us where's the beef? Where's this policy language you're complaining about? And we need that stuff. That's why we set up that policies@uphelp.org.
That decision was made because of your advocacy. Without that, there may be people now who wouldn't be covered for wildfire.
Right, but the stronger we are, you know, the more you support us, the more we can try to fight these battles, because there's obviously more battles out there than we can fight you know, on our own. That's why we're building these alliances that we're talking about today. So what's another coverage gap that's making it hard for you guys to do your jobs, guys and gals? The ACB, the depreciation, the language that we first saw it rolled out in Oklahoma, and then, you know, the insurers will pick a state where the regulator is friendly with them, and they will unroll an exclusion, get it approved, or they'll get it into the market, and then it makes it easier for them to go to the next state and try to get it approved.
You know, and I want to give a shout out to the leadership at Apia, because at the last conference they actually had as the person of the year, and I know there were people who were getting some backlash about it, but they had somebody from the Oklahoma Office of Insurance, the Oklahoma Department of Insurance, that was out there, one of the staff members who've been working. Right, and
great guy.
And being able to reach out to the staff members who might be there longer than what any given insurance commissioner is, so the professionals that are there that are working within the NIC, who you've established these relationships with. I mean, I thought Apia doing that last winter was really a great move on their part, and I thought was, because this is something that the insurance industry has been doing forever and a day. I mean, they have the legislator of the year. He happens to be writing the most anti-consumer law that's hurting all of his constituents. Everybody would vote for him, but you know, most people aren't paying attention to insurance laws. You know, they just don't have the time to worry about it. Most of the time it's buried somewhere, and you really are, you know, and what we do are the stops against those insurance company lobbyists. And earlier, Holly, you had that, like, you had a giant and then you had a little person. The insurance lobbies are giants. I mean, I look around sometimes, I told, you know, Tim Corness, I feel like there's an army out there, and there's just a few of us, like a little small patrol out here trying to stop them. So, you know, again, it's needed. Amy, I didn't mean to, because there's a lot of different.
I was going to say that, you know, we are building alliances. That's what we're talking about today. We're trying to strengthen our allies, and you know, we find friends in strange places. I would never have thought the Oklahoma department would be helpful, just like I didn't really think the president was going to be helpful, but you never know, right? And you never know who's going to help you. Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, they hold the loans on most of the mortgages that are out there in the United States. They came to my organization and said, hey, we're worried about these exclusions that we're seeing to exclude fires caused by flying embers. And they brought us that. And now they're an ally. The realtors are an ally for us. Who would have thunk it, right? Okay, what are the other coverage gaps that are stumbling blocks? The newest one, no surprise, climate change is bringing more hail. We're seeing more hail damage. We're seeing it in Colorado. We had seen it in Texas. So what are the carriers doing? They're looking for ways to limit their exposure to hail claims. So how did they do that? Well, one way they did it is by trying to put in these exclusions for what they call marring, saying it's trivial, it's cosmetic, it's not that bad, and therefore we're not going to pay. That's a perfect example of a reaction from the insurers. Going back to the drafting table. Okay, what's another one? We've got building code upgrades. That's a long-standing challenge. Where another one, depreciation of labor. Merlin Law Group has been an amazing leader with our amicus project. They've been drafting a lot of our amicus briefs. We have some other firms helping, but it's been Merlin's team arguing in courts around the country why the insurers shouldn't be allowed to depreciate labor. It's a dollars and cents issue for policyholders and for you guys. Anything you want to say about that, Chip?
Well, I mean, it is a big issue. So, I mean, what happens today is that there's breakage. People don't get paid as much. And if you're getting paid after you take off, the depreciation of the physical, you take off the depreciation of labor. If you do it with respect to repairs, the people just don't have enough. And a lot of times people give up. And so the insurance companies are just doing it for one reason. That's to save money and bolster their profits. And so they're changing the small print in the policies, and it adds up. I mean, nickels and dimes and quarters. Eventually, people never go back to replacement cost coverage. But
right.
We've been finding these other gaps and these other exclusions. They're putting all kinds of limits on the various parts of the insurance policy, that we have out there. And I guess we could go on and on about these, but before I get to I guess we have even on virus exclusions,
we
be in there.
Huge coverage gap.
We blasted through one of the ultimate coverage killers, anti-concurrent causation clauses. But again, these are to illustrate to the audience today that this is an ongoing battle. It's not going to ever end.
Okay, so Amy, I'm a public adjuster.
A reaction.
I'm a public adjuster. I come up with, holy cow, they've excluded, all this water. I don't get more than $1,500 for any water damage claim. And they have this huge definition that somehow I'm watching for the first time it's gone through. Or let's make it up. Oh, if you don't give notice within 24 hours or 48 hours, and you don't get covered. Where do you want them to send these policies or portions of policies to? What if I'm a public adjuster? What am I supposed to do?
You have a digital, you have a PDF, you got a Word, you got a photograph of policy language that jumps out at you, that's non-standard, that's a coverage killer. You email it to policies@uphelp.org. Just the word policies@uphelp.org.
Right.
We need that ammunition.
We need it a lot. So I want to keep moving on because I know we only have a little bit of time, and thank you for telling everybody what to do. But we're going to move on to the coronavirus losses and the business interruption claims there. And Amy, I'll let you start off on this.
Okay, so another classic example of how you have a huge cat, you get a hurricane, you get Superstorm Sandy, and immediately after the event, the headlines are full of messaging from industry sources and hopefully messaging from policyholder attorneys, a sort of a tit for, sort of back and forth volleying of, overgeneralizing. Oh, none of these claims are going to be covered. These claims should be covered. That's not going to help you and your clients. What is going to help you and your clients is doing what you always do, putting the carrier on notice, putting the claim together and submitting it. What are some of the factors that are going to influence the outcomes on these business interruption claims that are pouring into some of your offices? You're reading these policies, you're looking for coverage. What's going to affect the outcome? Well, obviously the policy language, but also litigation and how the courts rule. We've already had 7 or so lawsuits filed. We've had a bunch of them filed for restaurants. We'll see how the courts rule. That's going to affect outcomes, the same as we saw after Hurricane Katrina. What else are we seeing? We're seeing public officials that want their constituents to see that they are doing things to help them, putting in bills to say, you know, and then again, you're going to hear the kind of back and forth in the media, oh, don't retroactively impair our contracts and all that stuff. What really matters? What's in those policies? How are the courts going to interpret them? We don't know. So again, do your job and know that there may be help on the way, but we don't know. Step 1, making sure that your clients have and you have on their behalf all their policies that might be helpful here. Helping your clients focus. They're panicking, they feel like they're going under, but they've got to be pulling together that documentation. You know all about this. You know, do they need to be hiring forensic accountants? Not yet, probably, but they at least need you to be helping them identify what their business losses are associated to this. Reading the policy, you know, some of you are pretty good at parsing, but you may need help from a coverage attorney, because there's a lot of creativity. We've been seeing all kinds of interesting arguments coming up from law firms. And if your client has, go ahead, Chip, you want to jump in?
I can't overstate that. There's actually like Gerald, a good friend of mine, Gerald Osinski, I haven't seen in a decade, but you know, we've been on panels. He has a great lawsuit that he just filed, noting that the coronavirus exclusion looks like it only applies to New York. His clients in Connecticut, just from the way they wrote it and reading the policy very, you know, closely. So, you know, reading that full policy obviously, you know, means a lot. I don't want to keep too long, but we're finding the business income loss in the various areas of the policy. The various coverages are going to come up: lost profits, decontamination, contingent business. The more sophisticated you are, you might have a issue with that. Keeping really track of those extra expenses, like Amy talked about, it was pretty important in the civil authority. And I know that there are some clients that might end up getting sued for some of these things, and you might end up having to take a look under the CGL, you know, policy. And Amy, I didn't want to cut you off, but why don't you go ahead on some of these threshold matters?
No, it's fine. You know, there have been, you know, every policyholder, you know, coverage firm in the country is offering webinars, and I've seen some very interesting arguments being made about, and Chip, I think you mentioned this earlier, about the virus and what is it? Is it that it can arguably constitute physical damage? We've seen arguments, and a lot of them are still kind of getting bandied around. It's very early here. There are, you know, very unfortunately, there's only about a third of the businesses in this country that even have business interruption coverage. So we'll be looking at BOPs, we'll be looking at CGLs for coverage. If you have a coverage form index, it's a good place to start to see what endorsements might be available. And again, people are getting creative. They're looking very hard at these orders, these emergency orders that are saying why the business had to shut down.
Now, this was a gift from heaven. I was working at home last Friday, and in the background, and I said, did Trump say that? And about 20 minutes later, a public adjuster who had copied the thing sent it to me. I plugged it again, and sure enough, the president started talking about business interruption coverage, and he went out of his way. And he stopped the questioner on the topic he was talking about and specifically turned and went into business interruption coverage, saying that all these businesses have been paying for 20 to 25 years, and now their business is interrupted. And he said he didn't see any exclusion for a pandemic, and there's coverage. And he said, you know, the insurance executives know what's fair. And he was really almost sounding like our clients who are coming to me right now, say their business has been interrupted. I've been paying. Why don't I have coverage? And what they're really saying, it's the fine print that's taking it away. And so for a long time from here on out, we're going to be using President Trump to go back with respect to these coverage gaps, because what coverage gaps? They're the fine print. And only dastardly people would do this. Rather than publish upfront, give you big warnings. Hey, you don't have coverage for all this stuff and all that. Instead, we get these crazy advertisements about, a gecko and all this other kind of stuff. You can save money. No wonder your policy doesn't cover anything, which has really started a lot of the coverage gap issue on it. So the president's really done us a big favor, as we come to that. There are a lot of lawsuits. We just have a few. There every day there's lawsuits being filed. A lot of them aren't so good, but a few of them I read are just fantastic. Holly, do you want to mention, because there's really two different type of state bills that are being issued right now that are a little bit different.
Yeah, there are two different bills, and there are also lots of regulations that have been coming out. So with regard to the two different kinds of bills, there are the bills where the states are going in and saying, we're going to retroactively create your policy so that it's automatically covered. There are about 5 states that have bills like that right now, including New York, which has really been hard hit. And then there are a few other states like Pennsylvania and South Carolina, where the government is setting up a fund to pay the claim. So that's why it's so important to make the claim now and to document your claim, because Pennsylvania has a bill with bipartisan support that sets up a fund and says if your claim is denied from your carrier, we will set up a fund to reimburse you for those claims, but they have to be adjusted properly. You can't just sit back and do nothing and then a year from now say, okay, well, this was my business interruption loss. You have to go through the process of documenting your claim and bringing your claim. And then there's been some talk of the South Carolina bill has a portion of it where the state will reimburse, but then the carriers can take sort of long-term loans to pay it back. And then there's been talk of a federal bill. But just getting back to how the coverage gaps in the COVID-19, I get all these laws and bills across my desk every morning. And then lately I've seen a lot of regulations on all aspects of the COVID-19 impact on everybody. And one came today that talked about just what Amy was talking about for code upgrades. They've waived requirements for code upgrades in a lot of states. So this is something where you really have to pay attention to what it is that's going on around you, because it's going to affect the way you adjust your everyday claims as well as the COVID-19 claims. If there's no requirement for code upgrades, it's going to affect the value of the claim, and it's going to affect how you approach the rebuild with your construction. So yes, there's lots of legislation out there, and Amy's keeping a great library of all of this. So if you have any questions about how it affects your state, then just go to the UP website. Hopefully you'll be a sponsor and a member, and you'll see the proposed legislation in your state and even some regulations as to how this may impact the way you're doing your job right now, even if it's not a COVID-19 claim.
Now,
and Holly was one of our library advisors, so thank you, Holly.
So one of the things the insurance companies have been talking about, and I just hear it over and over, this coronavirus, it's not really physical loss or damage. They're going to cite some cases for the proposition that these slight, it's almost like it's mold or it's dust. And they'll cite one case, and I've even talked about this Louisiana case that's here that talks about lead dust is physical damage. But I really want to hit this home with everybody, and so I want you to remember this photograph, okay? And I wish I had a cat, 3 black cats, and they didn't do this. Instead, man, they wanted to go on a couch. They became outdoor black cats rather than indoor black cats. But there is a case out there that says that cat pee is physical damage. The odor of cat pee, just smelling that obnoxious. So just think, if cat pee is physical damage and it doesn't kill you, the coronavirus that will kill you, that'll put you in the hospital, it is physical damage. If cat pee is damage and physical damage, certainly coronavirus is physical damage. And don't let the insurance companies get away with saying it's just like dust, it's not there, blah, 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 blah. Bull, I want you to remember it that way. I think if you think about that cat, you'll always remember it that way too. So that's why I put it in there. This is a big shout out again to Apia and Jeff O'Connor. I think Anita Taft may have sent one for Gappy because I drafted a letter for her as well too. But every public adjuster leader, if you can in your states, get these letters out to the insurance commissioners. Holly, I like the way you just said it. These time frames for policyholders are marching along. The 180 days here, for the replacement, 2 years to go do the code upgrade and all these various other things, the the times to file proofs of loss, blah, blah, blah. Maryland had a great response, but Jeffrey O'Connor, the leadership in Apia, did a great job sending it out to all the insurance commissioners. But I wrote a blog just challenging every single public adjuster and hey, be on the side of angels, write these letters, ask for it, let people know, what's going on out there. A lot of the insurance commissioners don't think about these because they don't read the policies the way you do. The public adjusters are the experts, guys, and you ought to let them know about this. And certainly Amy, has done everything she can do to help out. So the one thing about this, to make the claim, I always say report the loss. If you have to do one thing, I tell everybody, the policyholder has a loss, has one duty to do: report the loss. There's even some insurance agent indications from the Big I that, hey, if they have a loss, even if it's less than the deductible, they still have a duty to report it. You're supposed to report your loss. So report the loss. If the people call you, people ask me, Chip, what are they supposed to do? Report the loss. That starts off. You can do everything else afterwards, but if you don't report this loss, the last thing you want to have is what happens if we have great, case law that comes out from some of these things. What happens if the federal government makes a backstop? What happens if some of these states actually come through and somehow the retroactive language is constitutional? If you don't report the loss, you don't get the money. So, in terms of a lesson, report the loss and tell everybody to do that. You're supposed to be doing it. I know the agents don't want to hear that because it's a lot of extra time and money, but, report the loss. So we're about almost out of time. If there's questions, do we have time for questions? They want us to email questions. So unfortunately, I have to email questions. I wrote a great book, I think, that public adjusters can use to help sign up, because we talk about public adjusters and what they can do. I hope you go get the book. If it's good for anything, at least be good to put you to sleep. So, it's a lot less expensive than sleeping pills and stuff, and a lot less dangerous. I give people my cell phone number. There it is, 813-695-8733. I don't worry. People don't tend to go ahead and abuse it and stuff like that. I'll probably get phone calls now from some friends at 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the morning, but there it is. Amy, one last thing, I know you want people to go and sign up. This is how they get in touch with Amy right down here. This is what they need. All these people go to this, and one more time, where are they supposed to send these coverage? What's the email address?
So you can mark at uphelp.org is Mark Dillman. That's our staff counsel. Born and bred public adjuster out of Connecticut, became a lawyer, came out to California, worked for us. You can send your policies to mark at uphelp.org if you can't remember policies at uphelp.org. And he will also answer questions about how to become a sponsor. But you're welcome to use the phone, and then my email is, it gets abused daily. I don't mind.
Now, Holly's the general counsel. If any of you guys are out there, you get arrested, you got picked up, you got licensing problems, what Holly really does for a living most of the time, and where she makes most of her money, is representing public adjusters with respect to licensing authorities. So if you're ever in trouble out there with anything like that, if you need to get corporations set up in different states, DBAs set up, how you get your contracts done, is your contract legal or not, all those crazy little regulatory things that are driving you nuts. If you're thinking because there's an earthquake in California that happens right after we get done, and off you go, you want to go to California, know how to do it? Call Holly. That's what she does. Don't call Chip when you get thrown in jail. Call Holly at 215-244-1045. Right, Holly? I'm going to get in touch with you.
Yes, and that's forwarded to my cell these days. So don't worry, just call that number. That's my office line. Or if you have my cell, I didn't post it, but if you have it, feel free to use that as well, because that number forwards right to my cell phone. So I'd be happy to help.
Now we have I don't even know where I go. Megan, where do I go for this? Where can people download? We have a COVID-19 business interruption claims ebook that people can go to. And if you find that, you can go ahead and download it, but where all public adjusters can get it. If you need more instructions about that, remember, Tuesdays at 2, we have our weekly Facebook Live seminars. Rather than do the coronavirus, because it just gets to be so much, to be honest with you, I think a bigger topic we're going to do this Tuesday at 2 o'clock is going to have to do with appraisals, and a lot of all the stuff's going on, who can be an appraiser, how you can hire an appraiser, and all that kind of stuff, and some of the more recent issues that seem to be coming up in appraisal, both especially in Colorado, Texas, and Florida. But this whole issue of appraisals is changing a lot, especially as insurance companies are also writing some stuff in about arbitrations. And guys, I think that's about it. We've done everything we possibly can to help. So might makes right. Remember these certain things. Join United Policyholders. Become involved. Join one of the associations and stuff like that. If you're a member of the association, get more involved. Report the loss. Hopefully you report the loss. And if everything else fails and you're having all these problems tonight, just buy my book. It'll help you go to sleep.
And
Goodbye, everybody.
TGIF.
Spending your time with us.